Hello, let's read Madame Badobedah. Part 1, The New Old Guest. My name is Mabel. I live somewhere curious. It's called the Mermaid Hotel. My dad is the manager, but my mom is the boss. Our back door leads to the sea, along a path of old men trees, battered and bent by the wind and salt. Rock thyme twines with thistles that spike your feet if you're barefoot, but I don't care, because I'm an adventurer, and adventurers are often shoeless. As well as bare feet, adventurers like Swiss cheese, the number 8, donkeys, and popovers. Yum, popovers. Adventurers don't like being told what to do, spiders, ham, and gym shoes because they smell like cardboard boxes. Mine are too tight. They sit at school in a box with all the other smelly gym shoes for company. I am an only child. I can cross my eyes, and sometimes when I write, I get my D's and B's mixed up. My teacher, Mrs. Banks, says, "Mabel, your D is dancing to the beat of a B," and then she laughs. Bad joke. I prefer home, no shoes, more bare feet, and adventure. Lots of lovely adventure. The Mermaid Hotel. Although the Mermaid Hotel is called a hotel, it's really a bed and breakfast. That means you get a bed and breakfast, but you have to make your own lunch and dinner. The hotel has bothersome seagulls that shriek on the sills, and a mermaid over the front door that I call Beryl in Peril, because she's far from the sea, waving. And inside, little packets of marmalade and butter that I hide in my pockets because they make a good snack. But most importantly, the Mermaid Hotel has guests, strangers who come and go. Some are delightful. Some are like ham. I am not a guest. I am a resident. I'm going to tell you the story of our most interesting guest. I was sitting under the front desk, minding my own business, when the bell rang. Ring! I peered up. She was old, with red lips. She was not alone. She had 2 dogs, 2 cats, a tortoise, and 23 bags, all clustered around her like a choir. I thought she might be a little bit awful. "Darling," she growled, "please remove yourself from under the desk and pass me my bag. The blue one there, to the right of that terrifically ugly coat stand." "No, you frightful little child, not that one. Blue, I said." I passed her the bag. It felt like it had 10 gold bars in it. I might have given her an icy glare. No one had ever called me such names before, and I adore that coat stand. The awful stranger didn't say thank you. Behind her trailed the smells of old roses, spice, and vanilla. Her hair was red and crunchy, like a candy apple without the stickiness. She wore a cloud of feathers around her neck. Her head poked out like an angry ostrich pecking for grubs. That was when I named her Madame Badobedah. Rhymes with ooh la la. A good name for the growly-voiced, suitcase-heavy, feather-clad guest who I was 110% sure was a villain. 2 big trunks, 1 dressing table, the 23 bags, even the dogs had bags, 13 boxes, and hundreds of trinkets, all spilling down the hall after her. "Good grief, all this stuff," my mom muttered as she and Dad staggered up the stairs. Madame Badobedah walked silently behind, arrow straight, carrying nothing but a cushion with her tortoise balanced on it like a precious, scaly emerald. She slipped a toffee into her mouth. She didn't offer me one. We stopped outside room 32. Room 32 has a bedroom and a sitting room, 1 bath, 1 sink, 1 toaster, and 7 teacups, but only 4 saucers. Room 32 has an extraordinary secret, too, but I'm not going to tell you that right now. I know this because I know all the rooms at the Mermaid Hotel, along with their secrets. I don't have brothers and sisters. I have rooms. A room can be a lot like a person. It sees stories and parties and lazy days and birthday cakes, and sometimes it sees sad things too. So, with its secrets and saucers, room 32 now also had Madame Badobedah, 2 dogs, 2 cats, a tortoise, and Madame Badobedah's secrets, a whole heap of them. It was like a circus, my mom said later. Rude woman. Poor woman, my dad said. I wondered what he meant. Those trunks, Mom said. I thought those trunks were full of stolen gold. That dressing table was spitting jewels. She is not on vacation, I thought. Oh, this one is never leaving. I decided I better keep an eye out to see what that old sneak was up to. I'm just going upstairs to find a book, I shouted. In a spy costume? My dad asked. I'm wearing a raincoat and sunglasses because the weather forecast is varied, I said. Whatever you say, Mabel, Dad replied. When a guest comes to stay, I'm not allowed to go into their room anymore because it suddenly belongs to them and is private. But the hotel is, after all, where I live. A guest is just borrowing the room, really. So sometimes I peek through the keyhole a bit to see what's happening. Then I'm not just Mabel, but Mabel the spy. And spies spy. To be the best spy, you need to be really good at observing people, what they are like, what habits they have. A habit is something that is hard to give up. I have the habit of biting my nails. Nails are so chewy and hard and delicious. I might also have the habit of picking my nose and wiping it on the wall. Ew. And after observing Madame Badobedah through the keyhole for a whole 3.5 minutes, I had a strong theory about her. She was, without question, an ancient supervillain on the run from the police. Her chosen hideout, room 32, the Mermaid Hotel. This was the evidence. 1. The fugitive looked around the room. She pulled out a pair of ballet shoes from one of the many trunks. She kissed them. Clearly, she did ballet to get all limber, for breaking and entering, and for catapulting through museums in a catsuit. 2. A shopping list of strangeness exploded from her bags. A gleaming tiara, 1 ice skate, a Hawaiian lei, and a pack of cards. Curious. 3. The fugitive hid a pile of coins under her bed, in a sock. She arranged the lei over it. She'd obviously brought it to remind her of her family who were waiting for her in Honolulu. She had joined them when the coast was clear. 4. A police car whistled past in the distance. She sank down as though she was hiding, and then the strangest thing happened. Madame Badobedah sat on the bed, and cried. I studied her for days. 1. Madame Badobedah never went outside. Not ever. 2. No one knew her name. All the grown-ups called her Mrs. Mutter. They seemed invisible to her. We all were. 3. That tortoise was the most suspicious creature I'd ever seen. He had beady little eyes, and he scurried around the corridors like a dizzy chicken. He ate bananas from her fingers, and bananas are revolting. 4. She did not say darling like anyone I know. Darlink. It was pure menace, whispered like an insult. 5. She wore 2 pairs of socks on each foot. Underneath the socks, her toes were long and purplish with knobs on them. They were grim. They were, in fact, the toes of a villain. Since no one else seemed to care that we were living with a high priestess of crime, I realized I was on my own, as usual. I would have to wait for the chance to catch her red-handed. Part 2. Sailing the High Seas. One Saturday morning I got in position again stationed outside room 32, and sat patiently scratching a hole in the carpet with my foot. Spies are patient, you see. This time, oh my, Madame Badobedah opened the door. She seemed to know I was on the other side. I pretended I was looking for a lost button. My favorite button, I said sadly to the air. Oh, where are you, dear button? Madame Badobedah said, would you like a cup of tea, darling? All right, I said, even though I was a tiny bit scared. But I'm not allowed to have tea. It wakes you up like Billy-O, you know. Billy-O? What fun! Perhaps an unofficial sip? Your name is Mabel, isn't it? My heart was thudding. She knew my name. I followed her into room 32. It felt different. It was bigger, cartoon-colored, alive somehow. The fire was roaring, even though the sun outside was shining, and that shifty tortoise skittered along the floor like a man on a mission. Scratchy music played on a magic box. Madame Badobedah's dressing table stood up against the wall as if it had always been there. Pots and cloudy puffs and lipstick sat on top, in the shadow of a huge bottle of perfume that read Shalimar. There were something like 507 drawers. I wanted to know what was in those drawers. It itched inside of me. I asked her, like I didn't care. So, what's in your drawers? Diamonds, coins from Cleopatra's tomb, things like that, Madame Badobedah said. My heart did a swan dive. I wore my best spy face, where my eyes give nothing away. I said. She poured me a cup of tea from a teapot that was wearing a sweater. Even he feels the cold in this blasted country, the poor darling, she said. The bed in room 32 looked like a pirate ship. I decided it was time to put Madame Badobedah's villainy to the test. Do you know who Anne Bonny was? I asked her. Questions. No, why don't you tell me, said Madame Badobedah. Anne was one of the most fearsome pirates of all time. She liked stealing gold, probably kept it in socks. I stared into her eyes. I bet she had a picture of Anne Bonny in a heart-shaped frame somewhere. I'm a big fan of gold, Madame Badobedah replied smoothly. She sounds marvelous. That bed of mine is a pirate ship. I call it the Not-So-Jolly Roger. Shall we set sail, Captain Mabel? I thought about it. Aye, aye, I said. I heard the seagulls cry, and somewhere in the distance a sea shanty echoed through the mist. The Not-So-Jolly Roger crew was weary after months at sea. The ship was creaking with jewels, coins, and exotic animals. There was a dodo in the dinghy, and a one-eyed parrot snored soundly on the cannon. It was the first mate who spied the approaching storm as she fed her cats anchovies. Yuck, anchovies, spiny and disgusting. There's a storm rolling in, Captain Darling, the first mate hollered. What is your command? Stay calm, fellow, I shouted. Secure the animals safely in the hold, and for pity's sake, put the rubies in your bloomers. I steered the ship through the wreathing waves and slashing rain, past a rainbow-colored serpent and a school of flying fish. I needed toffee, too. Sweets are vital in a storm. I bellowed as I saw that sneaky first mate pop one into her mouth. I navigated my trusty ship around the treacherous rocks, leaning in as we missed them by a breath. And as the sun rose, we saw the green of land, and the animals sighed with relief. I straightened my hat as we docked. The tortoise, whose name is Boris, was a bit green around the gills and wobbly on his feet. It had been a successful voyage. Then I remembered that, while she might be a good first mate, Madame Badobedah was still a villain, most probably a very dangerous criminal. Also, the room smelled of anchovies. Time to escape. Take care of your bloomers, I said, and ran downstairs. Part 2.5. Prehistoric bones and the excuses grown-ups make. All the grown-ups said that Madame Badobedah was rude. My dad said she was rude because she was lonely. My mom said she thought she was a princess. I remembered her tiara. Sometimes before school, I was allowed to take the villain her toast and marmalade in bed. "Come in, Captain Mabel," Madame Badobedah would say, her voice a mixture of honey and sea stones all clanking together in a jar. She'd sit up in bed with a cough and a rattle. "A quick game of old maid before school? And darling, could you open the curtains, please? I'm prehistoric and I don't think my bones have woken up yet." If it was raining, which it did a lot, she'd say, "Oh well, I shall just stay in the pirate ship all day," and she'd pull the covers up to her chin. I think this was her big excuse to lurk inside all day, guarding her money sock. The weather is often used as an excuse by grown-ups. Once the phone rang and she picked it up and snapped, "No, I simply can't meet you at midday. I'm ludicrously busy." I held my bed. She snuggled back down into bed and winked at me. Busyness is another well-known grown-up excuse, but lying and avoiding people? Shady lady. Part 3. The place where mermaids swim. When she was a girl, before she was an international jewel thief, Madame Badobedah crossed the sea on a big ship because there was a war. She told me this as we drank hot cocoa and ate cookies on her bed. "When my ship docked in New York, I could still feel the ground moving under my feet for 2 whole weeks, even though I was on dry land. It was most strange." Madame Badobedah was a ballerina when she was young. She showed me how she could walk with a book balanced on her head, the book perched on her nest of hair like a sparrow. "I was the sugar plum fairy in The Nutcracker," she said. "I wore a jeweled tiara, and once I was so poor that I had to eat bread soup because the only thing in the cupboard was dry bread." She laughed, spraying cookie crumbs onto the cats and dogs. She said a man she once knew always called her "my sweetheart." I think it was her husband, who was probably wearing shorts and waiting for her in the tropical breeze with the rest of her family. She said a mountain of people had asked for her hand. "But get that ring on your finger and he'll want the whole arm, darling. It's very important for a woman to be independent, Captain Mabel. This you should know." I told her I could hold my breath underwater in the bath for 43 seconds. This might be a lie. "Because you're brilliant," Madame Badobedah said. "Can you ice skate?" "No," I said. I used to love it. I'd skate on a river in the winter with my cousin Olga, and we would swim in that very same river in the summer. Madame Badobedah poured me another cup. Olga's eyes were the color of shiny black beetles, and she hated saying sorry, she laughed. "It's so important in life to say sorry if one has gone wrong, darling." "Grown-ups never say sorry, really," I answered, "but they expect children to do it all the time." I stroked Boris's scaly little foot. "Well, Mabel, I want to say sorry to you," Madame Badobedah said. "I'm truly sorry I was grumpy and foul and said dreadful things to you when I first arrived. I was afraid of this new place and starting again. I'm so old to start again." "It's okay," I said. I realized then that I really quite liked her, even though she was on the run, with her funny habits and her strange toes and her banana-eating tortoise. Sneaky old villain. I took a deep breath. "You don't even know the best secret about the Mermaid Hotel yet," I said. "It's in this room. It's even better than the pirate ship." Madame Badobedah's eyes lit up. "I'll take you. No one knows how to get there but me," I whispered, taking her soft, gnarled hand. "I'm honored," the villain said. "I'm ready. A boiled sweet for the road, Captain?" She gave me a lemon barley candy from the tin, all sneezy with powdered sugar. I pushed against a panel on the wall, and a door opened. "You thought this was just an extra closet," I said, as we crawled in past the quiet and shushing dresses, and she laughed and said, "I did. Oof, my knees." "Are you all right, or do you need oiling?" I asked her. "Oh, creaking is like laughing, my sweet. It means you're having fun," Madame Badobedah said. We slithered through a jungle of bags and shoes, and I was pricked by a safety pin, and we had to administer first aid with a tin box, some tissues, and an old toffee. Being an adventurer can be dangerous, Madame Badobedah said, but exactly the right kind of danger, darling. We had reached the end of the closet, where the last rafter met the ceiling. I knocked on it 3 times, and the mermaids answered me. They always do. They sang through the walls, and their voices were sweet. The mermaids say you're a friend, I told Madame Badobedah, and she grinned, her teeth shining in the dark. I am, she said. I'd never seen her grin before. Shut your eyes and count to 10, please. Madame Badobedah counted slowly. Now open. Her eyes grew big. Oh, Mabel, how wonderful, she said. Feel that balmy breeze. Look, there's the pirate ship in the cove. And what is this? Oh, a waterfall. It's heaven. I'm so thrilled I brought my bathing costume. Madame Badobedah floated in the pool, drinking from a coconut, and the mermaids combed and braided my hair and told me they'd missed me. My cousin Olga would have adored it here, Madame Badobedah said, kicking her legs. Simply adored it. We were building a sandcastle and plotting a dive for pearls when I heard my mom call, Mabel, up the stairs in her business voice, so we had to tear ourselves away from paradise, crawling double quick back through the dresses. I shouted, I'm coming, Mom, and that was when Madame Badobedah picked up something from her dresser and handed it to me. It was a huge, shimmering, real-life pearl. She closed my fingers around it and said, A present for you, adventurer. I gasped. I wondered if it was from one of her heists. I didn't know anyone else with precious jewels just hanging about. Thank you, I said. I didn't want to leave her. I wondered what she'd do when I was gone. She would sit by the window, I thought, with the dogs at her feet and look out at the sea. She would say it was achy bones cold and wrap a quilt around herself. Madame Badobedah says I have good bones and an old soul. She talks about bones a lot. Old ones, good ones, cold ones, aching ones. After my bath, I snuck up for a game of Old Maid on the pirate ship. We were both in our 90s. I wore my sunglasses so my eyes wouldn't give me away, and when I won, Madame Badobedah cried, Villainous! And then she smiled a great big smile as big as the sky. But you are the villain, I said. Robber royalty. I took the sunglasses off. They had polka dots. Madame Badobedah has big green eyes with purple crinkles underneath. Gosh, am I? She said. A villain? My children certainly think I am. I didn't know she had children. They'd never come to visit. You steal jewels and rob pyramids and are on the run with your animals, I said in a rush. The Mermaid Hotel is your hideout. You'll be reunited with your husband one day on an island in the sun. I've figured it all out. Reunited? There was a long pause. She looked toward the sea, as she always did. Then she looked me dead in the eyes. Well, Captain, you've found me out, darling, she said. There's nowhere for me to run. Can we keep it between us? I'd like to live out my last days peacefully. I thought about Madame Badobedah's lovely smile, how she swims with mermaids, owns a tortoise named Boris, is never without a toffee, and always lets me be the captain. I thought about how she says sorry like she means it, has a perfume with a brave horse's name, Shalimar, and how she could pirouette through Cleopatra's tomb, arms full of treasure. I thought about pearls and bones and rainy days. I couldn't imagine anyone else would bring her toast and marmalade in prison. I'd be her only visitor. Okay, I said finally, smiling at her. It's a deal. I'm going to sleep with Madame Badobedah's pearl for the rest of my life. I hid it under my pillow, stroking its cool roundness. I wondered if I would dream of mermaids. What does Madame Badobedah dream of? Does she ice skate with Olga? Or sail the rocky seas toward an island where her family waits? And in those dreams, is she old or is she a child? What I do know is this. Madame Badobedah sleeps under the same roof as me. We dream at the same time. Her real name is Irina. She told me as I said good night. The end. And that was the story of Madame Badobedah. Did you enjoy that? I hope so. I hope you subscribe and come back often. And we'll see you next time on Stories with Grandma.